The crystalline palace of Zirian 7 had stood for 3,000 years, its translucent spires reaching toward the violet sky like fingers grasping at divinity. Within its walls, the protocols were absolute, the hierarchy sacred, and the laws immutable. Among these laws, none was more fundamental than this. Princess Maya, heir to the luminescent throne, was untouchable. Literally. William Chen had been on Zirian 7 for exactly 47 days when he first saw her. He'd arrived as part of the human diplomatic contingent, a junior cultural attaché whose primary qualification was his ability to keep his mouth shut during interminable council meetings. Earth's relationship with the Zirian Empire was delicate. Humanity was new to the galactic stage, barely a century removed from their first faster-than-light voyage, and the Zirians were ancient, powerful, and deeply traditional. The princess had glided into the hall of luminous accord like moonlight made manifest. Her skin held a faint iridescence, shifting between pearl and silver with each movement. Her eyes were the color of nebulae, deep purple shot through with stars. But it was the field around her that truly set her apart, a barely visible shimmer that extended precisely 1 meter from her body in all directions. The forbidden aura, they called it. Touch it and you died. Instantly. Painlessly, they said, but thoroughly and irreversibly. It was a genetic trait of the royal bloodline, a defense mechanism evolved over millennia, a mark of divinity that separated the rulers from the ruled. William had watched, fascinated, as the assembled dignitaries unconsciously shifted away from her, maintaining that respectful distance even as they bowed. She moved through the crowd like a stone through water, creating ripples of space wherever she went. "She's lonely," he'd murmured to Ambassador Rodriguez. The ambassador had gripped his elbow with surprising strength. "She's deadly, and she's sacred, remember that." But William couldn't stop watching her. Over the following weeks, he found himself assigned to more palace functions. His supervisor said it was because he had a non-threatening demeanor, which William suspected was diplomatic speak for boring enough not to cause an incident. He didn't mind. It meant more opportunities to observe Princess Maya. He noticed things. The way she held herself perfectly still when others spoke, as if afraid her movement might drive them further away. The fraction of a second she hesitated before entering a room, steeling herself for another performance of isolation. The careful blankness she maintained on her face, broken only occasionally by flickers of something deeper, longing perhaps or grief. At a reception celebrating the signing of the Third Commercial Treaty, William finally spoke to her. "Your Highness," he said, bowing at precisely the correct angle, 73 degrees, he'd practiced, while maintaining the proper distance. She turned those nebula eyes on him. "Attaché Chen, you're one of the humans." "Guilty as charged," he smiled. "Though I promise we're not all as boring as diplomatic functions make us seem." A ghost of amusement touched her lips. "I find that difficult to believe. Your ambassador Rodriguez delivered a 40-minute speech on grain tariffs yesterday. I'm fairly certain I aged a decade." William laughed, genuinely delighted. "I was there. I counted 3 separate instances where he used the phrase mutually beneficial agricultural frameworks. I'm pretty sure that's grounds for a war crimes tribunal back on Earth." This time she actually smiled. It transformed her face, made her seem less like a divine statue and more like a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 25 standard years, trapped in circumstances beyond her control. They began talking regularly after that. Brief conversations, always maintaining the prescribed distance, always in public spaces where their interaction was proper and observed. William learned that she'd never left Zirian 7, that she'd been raised by tutors and protocol officers, that the closest she'd come to physical affection was watching her servants from across a room. "What's it like?" she asked him once, late in the evening after most of the palace had retired. They stood on opposite sides of a balcony overlooking the city of lights. "Touch, I mean." William considered the question carefully. It's connection. It's how we know we're not alone. A handshake says, I see you, I acknowledge you. A hug says, you matter to me. It's communication beyond words. I've read about it, Maya said softly. In your human literature, the way you describe embraces, kisses, it seems like a language I'll never speak. That's not, William stopped himself. It was, actually. There was no cure for the forbidden aura, no way to disable it. It was woven into her genetic code as fundamentally as her purple eyes. Weeks became months. Their conversations deepened. William found himself falling for her, not just her beauty, though she was beautiful, but her sharp intelligence, her dry wit, her carefully hidden kindness. He saw how she positioned herself at state dinners so the servers wouldn't have to navigate around her aura. How she memorized the names and families of every palace worker, even though she could never share a meal with them or clasp their hands in thanks. Maya, for her part, lived for their conversations. William treated her like a person, not an icon. He argued with her about philosophy, made terrible jokes that she pretended not to find funny, and looked at her like she was a woman he was falling in love with, not a walking weapon. The crisis came suddenly. An assassination attempt, crude but nearly effective. Radical elements opposed to the Xerian Empire's opening to humanity had planted a quantum destabilizer in the Hall of Luminous Accord. It would have killed everyone in the room, including Maya, whose forbidden aura offered no protection against attacks that didn't require physical touch. William had stumbled on the device by accident, noticed the subtle distortion in space-time while waiting for a particularly dull trade negotiation to conclude. His shout of warning had given the palace guards just enough time to evacuate most of the room before the device activated. Most of the room. Maya had been trapped on the far side, separated by a collapsing doorway. William had seen her through the crystalline walls, seen her eyes widen with the understanding that she was about to die. He'd moved without thinking. The human body, it turned out, was more resilient than Xerian physiology. William had thrown himself through the collapsing doorway, sustaining injuries that would have killed a native Xerian but left him merely battered and bleeding. He'd grabbed Maya's hand, felt the forbidden aura burn through his nervous system like lightning, and pulled her through the gap. They'd collapsed together on the safe side of the barrier. The destabilizer had imploded behind them, contained by the palace's emergency protocols. And William Chen had done the impossible. He'd touched Princess Maya and survived. The palace physicians couldn't explain it. Humans, apparently, processed neurological trauma differently than Xerians. The forbidden aura was designed to interrupt specific neural pathways common to Xerian biology. William's brain had been damaged. He'd been unconscious for 3 days, but it had rooted around the damage, adapted, healed. When he woke, Maya was there, maintaining a careful distance. "You're an idiot," she said, but her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "You could have died." "Seemed worth the risk," William managed through a dry throat. "The physicians say you survived because human neurology is different, that you might be able to, that it might not kill you too." She couldn't finish the sentence. William sat up slowly, his body aching but functional. "May I approach, Your Highness?" The formal address made her laugh, though it came out half as a sob. "After you've already grabbed my hand and dragged me through a collapsing building, I think we're past formalities, William." He stood, crossed the distance between them. The forbidden aura shimmered around her, and he could feel it now, a subtle pressure, a warning written in electricity and quantum fields. But it didn't stop him. "Maya," he said softly, "I've been in love with you since you made fun of the ambassador's grain tariff speech. That's a terrible reason to fall in love with someone. I have better ones, want to hear them. I'd rather you showed me." William stepped into the forbidden aura. It felt like walking through warm static, like pressure against his skin, but it didn't kill him. His nervous system, rewired by his previous exposure, had learned to compensate. He cupped her face in his hands, the first person to touch her in her entire life. Maya gasped, tears streaming down her face. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Your hands, they're warm. I never knew warmth could be transferred like this." "May I kiss you?" William asked. The palace had gone silent around them. Guards and physicians and witnesses to an impossible moment held their collective breath. "Please," Maya breathed. William kissed her. It was gentle, reverent, and absolutely unprecedented. 3,000 years of tradition shattered in that moment. The untouchable princess, held in human arms. The forbidden aura, defied by alien biology and ridiculous human stubbornness. When they finally broke apart, Maya was smiling through her tears. "The council will lose their minds," she said. "Probably," William agreed. "Ambassador Rodriguez is definitely going to make me sit through a grain tariff lecture as punishment." "Worth it." "Absolutely." From that day forward, the Crystalline Palace was never quite the same. Princess Maya had touched and been touched, and the universe hadn't ended. The protocols began to shift, the laws to soften. And at the center of it all stood a human named William Chen, who had proven what humanity would come to be known for across the galaxy. They were too stubborn to know what was impossible, and too determined to care even when they found out.